Jake Brown here. I'm back. Andrew Hartz is here as well. I know a lot of people are very sad to hear that I'm returned, but I'm here from my staycation. But good to be back. And God, Mollie Walker's with us. These Rangers. I mean, they're gonna win it all. I mean, they're winning the cup. I mean, this team is just stupid
Wow.
good. I'm just Valentine's Day prediction as we record on Single Awareness Day here today is that the New York Rangers will not be single. They will be in love with a big, large Stanley Cup that they will have in June. I actually have my brother's bachelor party in June. I'm a little worried that it's going to, coincide with the cup. I think it's like June 9th. So I was kind of looking at the date. So that might be during the conference finals, maybe the cup. Already mapping it out because this team is filthy. Tarasenko, Molly. First game as a Ranger, boom, goal. First. I mean, it's the story, the Hollywood ending is there. I mean, the movie is being written by somebody right now. It's in the process and Larry Brooks will join us in just a little bit as well. But Molly, what a start for Tarasenko. Friday, the goal. Saturday, Artemi Panarin scores 4. First time in his career he's done that. Rangers won 5 straight. They're 24-3 since that December 5th win. I believe it was a Monday night because I was there against the Blues at the Garden that really just turned this season around. And this team is just electric right now as they head to Vancouver to take on the Canucks on Wednesday.
Look, there's so much to be excited about. And I don't fault you for going right ahead and saying that this could be the year for the Rangers because it very well could. The move that Chris Drury made for Tarasenko and Nico Mikkola is one that a team makes when they are making a run for the Stanley Cup. And we all know the Rangers have unfinished business from last season, and that is the kind of move that the Rangers needed to make in order to really make their lineup way more formidable. It gives Gallant much more flexibility with the top six. Um, we'll probably see that play out for the rest of the regular season where Tarasenko is going to play on the first line or the second line. But either way, I mean, they added a lot more star power with Tarasenko and they look like it. I mean, I wrote about it for today's paper. I mean, they were already winning before they made the trade, but there's an electricity to the team right now, and it's something that you can see not only on the ice when they're actually playing in a game, but it's in practice, it's in the locker room.
Yeah, you talk to guys about that in Canada. Can you talk about what these guys had to say about that addition, what it did to them?
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy Vesey told me when you see the GM go out and make that kind of move, it just kind of reaffirms their belief in the team and that they think that they're what they're capable of. And that's just a boost of confidence for everybody. Um, for a guy like Artemi Panarin, I mean, the guy is smiling all the time, and dare I say, he's been smiling harder and bigger since Tarasenko came into the room. But that's his buddy. And, if they weren't going to go out and get a guy like Patrick Kane, who's also his friend, I feel like Tarasenko was probably the next best thing, honestly. So Artemi Panarin looks like he's also revitalized. Like you said, first 4-goal game of his entire career, a 5-point night. I believe that was the 4th time he's done that in his career. And that I feel like is a pretty underrated storyline here. Is the Rangers do need to unlock Artemi Panarin not only just to get through the end of the regular season, but heading into the playoffs as well. Obviously, Artemi had a pretty mediocre playoff run, I would say, last season. So I think a major difference for them will be unlocking Artemi Panarin in the playoffs as well. So there's a lot to be excited about. I mean, the vibes are immaculate. I mean, everybody's excited. Everybody's happy. The team had a nice little Super Bowl party on Sunday at their hotel in Vancouver. So they're going to do even more team bonding stuff while they're away on this trip, which I wrote, it's the absolute perfect time for it. Just to let the guys further integrate and get more familiar with their new teammates. And that was a big thing for Drury, wanting to get it done now instead of closer to the March 3rd deadline so that the team has more time to get accustomed to each other and more games together, more chemistry. All of it is just the Rangers are just in a really great spot right now. And if they can continue stacking wins going forward here, they're going to be in a really, really good place going into the playoffs.
Something about bringing friends to the Garden. Tarasenko comes. The Knicks bring in Josh Hart, who's best buds with Jalen Brunson from Villanova. All the friends are coming to MSG, and the fans are coming out. Ticket prices are up the wazoo, and it's going to be a fun final stretch here into the playoffs for the Rangers. Might not be fun for Vitali Kravtsov, who might not be a part of it, as he has requested a trade. If you want to comment on that quick, we'll get into it in a few minutes with Larry, but it looks like he's out the door, if not before March 3rd, before the summer comes around.
It's the best thing for both parties involved is the number one thing that I want to say. I mean, I feel for Vitali, seeing him around the rink. The kid looks miserable, and that's just not something that you want for the
Can
team.
you see that? You see that in his body language. You can notice if the guy is miserable. You see it in his face. You see it in how he plays, how he practices.
100%. And I'm talking. This has been for weeks, going on weeks now. I would say I tried to talk to him a couple of weeks ago, and it was like pulling teeth. He, pun intended, but you could just. I said to him, I even said to him, I was like, you seem really down. And he was, I'm tired. And I was like, no, but like your demeanor right now, he just shrugging his shoulders, his head's down, not really talking that much to anybody around him. It's just, it's just such an unfortunate situation. He's such a young kid. He's had a really, really rough ride to start his NHL career. And I think that, there are a lot of, both sides are at fault. And it just kind of became a perfect storm. And now he's just in this really tough spot where obviously everybody knows that he wants out and he's on his way out. He's not going to play. And at this point, the best thing for him would just be to go elsewhere and to start over. So I want that for him. I want that for the Rangers. I think everybody's pulling for this whole saga to be put to bed because it's just gone on for too long. And Vitali just needs to start his career elsewhere. And I think that's definitely what's best for him, for sure.
Another guy wants to continue his career elsewhere is Patrick Kane, who seemed disgruntled that the Rangers got Tarasenko and have not got him yet. Now, is that still a possibility? The Rangers didn't give up a ton. They still have pieces if they did want to go after him. There's been the reports out there that they're worried about his hip, and there's concerns with that. What did Kane have to say? And is there a shot that, I mentioned we take a shot every time we say his name. Is there a shot that we're taking that he comes here?
I don't think that that's in play anymore after the Tarasenko trade. And I also think that Chicago's asking price is just too much.
What would a package be? What would the Mollie Walker trade proposal look like?
I mean, I'm not going to propose anything because I don't think the Rangers should do it because Chicago's gonna go after Filipino or Capo Caco, and that's a no-go going into the playoffs right now. Those are two key players for the Rangers right now, and if they're gearing up for the Stanley Cup, which everything that the Rangers have done indicates that they are, that's just basically bringing in a rental and clearing out a key spot, making a hole in the lineup. So it's not really what they did with Tarasenko and Mikkola was bringing in guys to fill holes while not getting rid of any key pieces. 2 conditional draft picks, Sammy Blais, who was in and out of the lineup on the 4th line, and a prospect in Hunter Skinner. So in technicality, with the Rangers lineup, they didn't lose anything, which was a huge part of it. But I feel like Chicago's asking price is just going to be too high for a guy like Patrick Kane. But I mean, it's a name, so and with the state that the organization is in, I don't blame them for shooting for the stars to try to get a massive return for him. But it's not in the best interest of the Rangers, I don't think. But yeah, Patrick Kane did sound a little salty when he was asked about the Rangers trade, and I have the quote right here. He said, "It's not like the happiest I've ever been to hear about a trade. I think the Rangers are a team that you definitely pay attention to and definitely are intrigued by for obvious reasons. If things were going to happen, that was a team I was definitely looking at. It seems like they kind of filled their void and went ahead and made a deal, so it is what it is." So it kind of sounds like Patrick Kane also knows that this kind of diminishes his chances probably altogether of coming to New York. So naturally, he's going to be a little bummed out about it. There's been so much smoke around their connection for years. So to kind of have it building up for so long and then just for to have it kind of go kaput, I'm sure is pretty disappointing for Patrick Kane. But for the Rangers, I think that this was definitely the better move of the two between Chicago and St. Louis for sure.
What is the saying? When there's smoke, there's fire. Well, the Rangers are on fire, and Jaroslav Halak, I just got to give him a round of applause. This guy's on a 7-game win streak after a 1-7 start, 0-6 start. Big fan of the backups. As a guy who would be a backup in most things myself, big fan of the backup. 7 in a row. And those emails, the hate mail you were getting for Halak early in the season, do we have a good backup goalie? The answer is yes. He's been absolutely fantastic. And I just wanted to give him his flowers, Molly, before we give it to Larry Brooks.
Absolutely, and I think it was funny early in the season. Everybody was like, "We have Louis Domingue in the AHL. Why aren't we bringing Louis Domingue up?" And it's like, look, Louis Domingue is a very adequate third stringer and even a backup on some teams. But Halak was the guy that they wanted for the number 2 spot, and like you said, he's just absolutely turned it around here, and now he's on a bit of a roll, and that is so huge for the Rangers. So huge.
Well, the Rangers will roll into Canada, so get your midday nap in, your late afternoon nap, so you could stay up late for these games. The 9 and 10 o'clock starts, the Canucks, the Oilers, the Flames, and then home against the Winnipeg Jets on Monday. Our Hall of Famer, Larry Brooks, is going to join us next. All righty, we welcome back our Hall of Fame writer, Larry Brooks, who you can follow on Twitter at NYP_Brooksy. Larry, welcome back to the program. Who's your Vladdy has been a big topic of the show. Hell of a start, right? First game, first goal, just like we wrote it up.
Yeah, 2.5 minutes. What more do you need? You don't need to see anything else. No, listen, he solidifies their lineup. There are some decisions still ahead, but hey, he's a good player. Yeah, honestly, we've talked to. He's a good player. That's really what I've got.
No, honestly, that's really the evaluation. That's the most normal. So, you confirmed a report going around that Vitali Kravtsov has been made available by the Rangers. I guess just in general, what have you gathered on the situation? And you wrote a column about basically what the Rangers need to do if they are making Kravtsov available. So if you could just get into that too.
Well, I don't think they have any obligation to move him just because there's been a request made. I understand the request. Anytime you add the modifier or add the term saga to a first round draft pick, yep. 3 years later or 4 years later, then something's going to miss. There was the Elias Anderson saga. There is the now Vitali Kravtsov saga. Listen, I think this, I think what we're looking at with Kravtsov is the end result of some poor decision making that kept him off the ice for for portions of a couple of seasons when it was most important for him to be on the ice developing. When you're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, you need to play hockey. You need to play. You don't need to just go home and sit because you're upset that you were assigned to the American League. Were there some errors made on the Rangers side? I'm sure there were. I'm sure this is a mutual failure at this point. But Kravtsov's decision making did not help at all. He should have played in the American League last year. He needed experience. It wouldn't have been a punishment. And we saw it when he came to training camp this year. He was eager to please. Everyone has good things to say about him for good reasons, but he was lacking so much experience that he got hurt every time he played. His first 3 games, right? He was hurt because he didn't know how to adapt to the North American game, even though he had played here a couple of years ago. And it was as if he was a neophyte And remember, the Rangers did not get off to a good start. There were in serious issues into December, so they didn't have the luxury of simply allowing Kravtsov to work through all of his issues. And that's kind of where we are now. He had a run of 17 games. Coach likes to talk about this a lot because he doesn't appreciate hearing that he didn't give him a chance. But he did have a run of 17 straight games. He was okay. I think we talked about this last week. Scored twice. You've got to score more than 2 goals if you're looking to earn ice time, if you're looking to earn a spot in the lineup. For a team that thinks the team that thinks and has good reason to at this point that it's a Stanley Cup contender. So you're not going to start trying to develop players, down the stretch of this season now, when you're gearing up for the playoffs and gearing up for a run. So I get why Kravtsov has asked to be traded. I get why Chris Drury is talking to general managers around the league. But if there's nothing, if Drury doesn't believe that he has an acceptable offer, then he should hold on to him until the summer and go back at it then. Do I think that using Kravtsov as the significant piece to get a 4th line rental is a good use of his of assets? Not particularly. I don't. Now, if Drury knows that there is nothing else he can get for him, if no one is offering anything for him better than, say, a 4th rounder, then maybe that changes the equation. And that's what we always deal with, on our side. We evaluate trades that are made without really knowing the entire landscape, because we don't know what the alternatives might have been. So we look at the Tarasenko trade and, oh yeah, this was a good deal. This was a fair deal. The Rangers got value, but we're not sure if there was another better deal on the table somewhere else, or, so, we operate with limited information on our side. And so if Chris Drury can't get anything more than a 4th rounder, and he doesn't think that it's going to be fruitful to keep him past the deadline, then I guess. But I just would like to see a little bit more coming back than a 4th line rental.
I really just think that it was a perfect storm on both sides, and the circumstances that Vitali Kravtsov came into this season under was a recipe for disaster. Like you said, he was such a people pleaser when he came in. They say jump, he says how high. That was the attitude that he had, which is the attitude that he needed to have after declining an AHL assignment. But in the same breath, he was petrified to do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing. And that's understandable, but no player, no matter what age, no matter how many years of experience, I feel like that's just not a circumstance that you can succeed under or thrive under. So I do feel for the kid. And I also feel like I have an inkling that in the past, with those decisions that he made, he's so young, he probably wasn't making it all by himself. He probably got some bad advice on the way. But in fairness to the Rangers, that's the decisions that are coming out of him and his camp are all that they can work with. And they did give him a chance this season.
Not only do they give him a chance, I mean, when we talked about it all the time, they gave him a spot on the second line.
Yeah, with Artemi there.
I mean, he came into camp as their second line right wing. They had blocked out a spot for him in the top 6, right. And you'd watch, or we would watch, the training camp sessions, and we would watch a couple of exhibition games and look at each other and say, why? What has he done to earn this? And so they wanted him to succeed this year. They did, but again, his first 3 games he got hurt because he couldn't avoid collisions. He was putting himself into vulnerable spots. And so you're the coach of the team, and again, they're not off to a good start. They can't necessarily afford to have, a question in their top 6 or even in their top 9. And so then he starts coming out of the lineup. He got, he had the dental issue, and it was just, there was just a comedy of errors. And what I think, and we talked about this a couple of times earlier, and I wrote about it a number of times. Each time the Rangers were preparing to send him to Hartford for a conditioning assignment, an opening developed in the Ranger lineup, and he played there instead of going to Hartford. I think it would have been better, and I didn't say this at the time, so this is just a complete look back, 2020 hindsight. It would have been better for him to go on a 2-week conditioning tour, because he would have gotten big minutes. He could have made mistakes. It wouldn't have cost the Rangers anything. But instead, he was up here, and trying to navigate through the league, which I don't think he's really quite ready for. And it's tough, because he's got talent. He's a personable individual. He's smart. But I'm just you can't get this out of your 9th overall draft pick. You can't. It's a real failure. When you sit back and we've written for years about this, but Anderson at 7 in 2017 and Kravtsov at 9 in 2018 are just major blows to the process.
I'm very curious to see, because he will be playing for a different team next season. There's just no doubt about it. I'm just very curious to see 2 things. One, right down league, or if they try to give him a shot in the lineup right away. But for me, what I've seen from him on the ice, he's passive. He gets knocked off the puck so easily that I don't see him as an NHL ready player at the moment. I think you're 100% right. I think that he needs some time in the American League to make mistakes, to develop, and make up for all that lost time not being on the ice when he was supposed to be developing.
Yeah, I think the best thing for him is to actually go through waivers for whichever team he's on. Even if it's the Rangers next year, by some odd occurrence.
I don't know about that.
No, I don't think so either. All right. But you see what I mean about our conversations? Yes, Molly. Yes. But no, the best thing for him would be to clear waivers and play in the American League. To get experience playing in the American League, bulk up a little bit, and then come back to the NHL when he's ready, because he certainly has the skill to play in the NHL.
Yeah, totally. Moving on to bigger and brighter topics. You were in Carolina the other night. I guess just a 2-parter. What was it like to see Artemi Panarin unload for 4 goals, 5 points? And then I know you had a conversation with Vincent Trocheck afterward just about the perceived lack of chemistry between the two, and he gave you a pretty insightful answer. So just what about that?
It was interesting because Panarin in the first period he was sent in alone by Zibanejad and missed the net by like 8 feet. It was, and I remember writing down like 0 confidence, no goal, 0 and 7 or whatever it was, 1 and 15, and and I underlined. And so honestly, he has, he's such a supremely confident guy, but his confidence wanes so quickly. And he's been missing the net on breakaways. He's been bad on breakaways. So, so I'm watching, and then they make the switch late in the second period. They went like 15 minutes without a shot in the second period. They had 2 shots for the first, I think, 17 minutes, and they were both on the same shift, Kreider and Trocheck. So this was a situation where Gallant was, certainly within his rights to make a line, to make line changes, because they were going nowhere. They had no possession of the puck, and it was only a 2-1 game, right? It's only 2-1 game. So immediately, of course, actually VC makes a really nice play. Panarin scores again, Panarin scores again, Panarin scores again, which is, surreal, honestly, because he's had so much trouble scoring this year. So what, he had 12 coming in, and he got a third of that in one game, or in 21 minutes, but he was shooting, he was shooting the puck. You could see he was a little bit lighter. And, for weeks and weeks, when the lineup has been shifting and the lines have been shifting, Gallant invariably muses, in the middle of questions that don't necessarily pertain even to the topic that he talks about. I know what my perfect lineup is. I can always go back to Chris and Mika, and always go back to Bread and Trocheck. And the way I have always seen the Rangers, perceive the Rangers coming in, their strength was their two-man combinations. It was, Strome and Panarin, and of course Kreider and Zibanejad, and that creates difficult matchup decisions for opposing coaches. So I too always kind of thought, listen, this is what they want to go back to. This is what they're going to go back to if they can. And so Panarin scores 4 goals with Trocheck, and I haven't talked a lot to Trocheck this year. We just, for whatever reason, I haven't spent a lot of time talking to him, but I have spent a lot of time writing that he and Panarin haven't meshed. And so after the game, a number of people were around Trocheck, and then I stayed and asked him. I said, listen, there has been this perception all year that you and Artemi just don't mesh. I said, I have certainly written it, I have certainly written it a number of times. And he said, I know. So I said, but do you feel that way? Do you feel that you haven't gelled, that your styles don't mesh? And he actually, he said absolutely not. And he talked about the process of adapting to a new system when he was traded from Florida to Carolina. And then he talked about coming to New York. And he said, actually, we got off to a really hot start. He said, but what I thought, because the defensive system was so different in Carolina, it's man. He said, I thought I was garbage defensively for the first 25 games. He said, I don't think there's anyone on this team with whom I don't mesh per se. And then he said, listen, he said, we play different styles. He said, but when both of our styles are working, that creates a chemistry between us that's even more difficult for teams to defend. He said, I don't think we have any issues at all. And then, so I said, I said, I appreciate the answer. I appreciate chatting. And he said, well, I appreciate, thank you for asking me that question. So I think what we're going to see going forward is this template: Kreider, Zibanejad, Panarin, Trocheck. It could switch up certain games when they're not going well, or if the coach thinks they need a jolt. But Trocheck was pretty clear about the fact that he believes he can and probably should be playing with Artemi Panarin.
I mean, I'll be the first to say, I've said it a million times that I thought that Trocheck has played his best hockey with the Rangers while he's been away from Panarin. But I mean, I guess 2 questions, kind of, one half thought, I guess. Do you feel like they can make it work consistently? And I guess they kind of have to, because if they don't, I feel like it just really complicates everything for the Rangers regarding Hedl and the top 6 if they can't make it work, because that's what Trocheck was brought in to do.
Right. Trocheck was brought in to be their second line center. That's it. Yeah, I think it can. I think so much is dependent upon Artemi. the way he's playing. I think Trocheck generally plays the same, generally, he plays the same game. And
he brings
he's at his
stuff every
best. He's at his best when he's playing on an edge, with an edge. Saturday night in Carolina was very emotional for him. It was the first game back in Raleigh after he'd been there. And he played with the same bite, the same snarl that he had played against the Rangers in the playoffs last year. I mean, honestly, watching those 7 games, you could understand easily why the Rangers signed Vincent Trocheck. He was a little, he's a little bit different than a lot of their guys because he does play with some snarl. He does yap, here and there. But he does play with emotion and he's a straight line guy. He's always sniffing around the net and so he's a compliment to Panarin if Panarin almost allows him to be that, because Artemi is such a virtuoso, but he's also a soloist in a lot of respects. And the one thing Strome did was defer, and Trocheck's not necessarily deferring. So I think there's enough time. Listen, there are 29 games left, 30 maybe, for them to work out whatever they need to work out. But I do think their strongest team has Trocheck and Kreider. Trocheck and Panarin. What'll be interesting to see is where will Tarasenko be? Will they keep Tarasenko with Zibanejad and Kreider? Will they move him so he can play with Panarin? Because I think Jimmy Vesey is kind of interchangeable whether he plays with Trocheck or with Zibanejad. It doesn't. Jimmy Vesey is having a terrific season.
I know, it's unbelievable.
Honestly, he's having a terrific season, and for those people who say he's a bottom 6 guy, what's he doing in the top 6? He has earned top 6. He's played like a top 6.
Yeah. Right. I wanted to say, you mentioned Trocheck's bite and snarl. My favorite thing that he's done this season is every single time an opponent, flips the puck out of play for a delay of game, he goes. he basically skates right by the guy and gives him a thumbs up in his face, and it's so funny every time. I think he's done it like 3 times now, and it's just so good. It's so funny. The player gets pissed off, and that's Vincent Trocheck, and you gotta love that.
Yeah. Alrighty, Larry Brooks. Follow him on Twitter, NYP_Brooksy. Larry, thanks for coming on.
Thanks.